Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video I will be talking about all the influential books that made me the reader that I am today. And the reason I decided to do this is because today I'm turning 26 and I decided that the best way to celebrate that is to see the books that made me who I am today. I have a bunch of books here, not all of them obviously. So I'm going to be talking about all the books that made me the reader that I am today in chronological order. I don't remember a lot of the plots of the older books, but I do remember how they made me feel, so I'm going to talk about that instead. So let's just get started. The first book that I remember reading that I have any recollection of is Le Chaboté. I remember reading that, I remember owning it, but I did not know how to speak French, but at the time I don't know how old I was. And it's basically the story about this person who inherited the cat. Like all his brothers inherited something and he inherited the cat, and he was upset because what am I going to do with the cat? And the cat tells him, let's just give me boots and I'll show you what to do. And the main cat is an orange cat. That's all. The main cat is an orange cat, and I think, and all of the cats that I have had throughout my entire life all have always been orange. So I think that book kind of did something to my brain to make me attracted to orange cats. So as I said, I had this book before I even could read it. I was only like flipping through the pages, the illustrations, and even when I actually started reading French, it wasn't like up to my level. So I had it for a very long time. Like I think the first time my parents read it for me, and then I just kept it and just kept looking at it and just kept teaching myself how to read it until I could finally actually read it. And I think it was a very influential book in my life, especially because I now own a orange cat. So I think it did its job and it helped me, and it was one of my favorite books at the time. It's the only book I remember from that time of my life. The second book, I was a little bit older, not really a book, it's a series, but I've never actually read this series in order at all. I don't think I've ever started it and finished it. I was just reading random books from whatever I could find. That's the series, which I completely forgot this series existed until I think recently I was scrolling on TikTok or Instagram and I found someone talking about them. It unlocked this old memory in my brain that I've had. I remember like really loving these series. It's about a group of 5, I think, high school students who also are this guardians to this magical galaxy and like magical stuff. And it was, the story doesn't really matter because I've never read it from start to finish, but I was really highly enjoying it, and it was like told through, again, illustrations and everything. And I just remember really loving that one. Whenever I would find some like a tome, whatever it's called, a tome, whenever I would find one book, I would just make sure to read it over and over again until I could get my hands on the next one, which might not be the next one. It might be like 2 books ahead or like behind, but I didn't care. I just wanted to read it. And then I kept reading a lot of books, but I don't remember any of them. None of them left any mark on myself, to be honest, on my reading taste. These are all the books that these are all the only 2 that I remember from my childhood. At one point in my life I stopped reading for like many years, and I was just reading stuff like for school, but nothing for enjoyment. But in 2016, I remember finding BookTube for the first time. I remember finding the OG BookTuber, like Jessie the Reader, what's her name, Kaz, Little Book Owl, a lot of many like BookTubers that I found at that time. And at that time, all of them were talking about one specific book, and it's Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. That book was everywhere, like, well, because YouTube found out that I actually liked BookTube, and I found out BookTube, it kept like throwing those kind of videos at me, and like people are reviewing the book. I really didn't pick it up because of the premise or anything. I just picked it up because of the cover. It had like metallic background with a crown and blood, and that really appealed to me. And also it was kind of shocking to me to find people my age or older still reading, because as I said, in my mind I equated reading with something childish because I was reading as a child. So I assumed that no one actually read because I didn't see anyone around me reading. So it was a complete shock to me to find books still getting published, because I thought, well, only books that exist are the old ones. There are no books coming out right now. And that one was a new release. People were no, I think it was the second book was a new release, but the first one was like out. And I picked it up, and I remember reading it in one weekend, and I felt so accomplished, and I felt it was so like entertaining. I was shocked that I could finish an entire book in one weekend, because like it felt like very fast, but it actually is quite a normal amount. And it's actually that book is a like typical YA fantasy with someone who didn't know she has powers, and now she has powers, and now she's involved with the royal family, and both princes are in love with her. It's actually it's actually very overly done at this point. Like a lot of stories have this sort of plot line, but to me at that point it was something completely new, and I was shocked by the revelations that happened, and I felt very highly entertained. And from then on, from that moment, I decided to start reading, and then I immediately picked up the next book. Didn't like it as much, but still was really like excited to get back to reading, and that started my reading journey. I was reading a lot, watching a lot of BookTube. I also joined Goodreads, which made me like see how all these people read so many books, and I wanted to do the same thing as them. So that basically is the start of my reading journey. And I was actually reading a lot of books, but I did not know like what books are my actual favorites. I was just enjoying everything. I didn't have like taste at that point. But the book that made me know what my taste is, I think, I don't remember like the exact order, so I'm going to talk about this one first, is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I remember reading that one not expecting anything, and the twists, the twists and the writing, and just how fast it went, and just I could not put it down. I remember that first time, like I read books and I liked them, but that was the first time I loved the book, and I was like, I want to read more of this, like this thriller sci-fi genre that only I think Blake Crouch does so perfectly well. And I have reread that book this year, and it still holds up. I also watched the show, and it's still really good as well. So I think it's in a way a book that made me realize what kind of books I liked, even though my taste has changed after that. But it was one of the first books I said like, this is the best book I've ever read, and it still holds up even to this day. The next book is The Humans, that I actually have a copy of, by Matt Haig. I also read this one the same year I think that I've read Dark Matter, and I also really like this one. This also is a sci-fi, so I was a huge fan of sci-fi. But this one isn't like hard sci-fi where there's a lot of action packed. This is more of meditations. Like, yes, we're seeing this alien who is going back to Earth because because this math professor solved this problem that in the alien's mind will help humans progress so much, and we are too dumb to have that much power. So the alien goes down to basically kill the professor and impersonate him, and then kill everyone in his life, everyone who knows about this problem that this professor solved. And that was the premise. But then you see how the alien is actually seeing what it's really like to be human, and you see how his meditations on what it really means to be human, which is actually this kind of same thing in the Dark Matter, which is basically this guy just thinking about what he wants in life, and the same thing about this one. There's probably a theme in here. I also reread this one this year. It holds up. The next book I think I'm going to talk about is my introduction to classics. This was the first classic I've ever read. It's The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. When I picked this book up, I did not know anything about it. I just went to the bookstore with my friend, and the premise sounded really interesting. It's basically about this scientist, or maybe doctor. Yeah, it's a doctor, obviously, Dr. Moreau. I'm gonna read you the blurb, so you know what's expected if you don't know. Edward Prendick, the sole survivor of a shipwreck in the South Pacific, is set ashore on an island where he meets the mysterious Dr. Moreau. Horrified by the discovery that Moreau is performing vivisection on animals to form monstrous human hybrids, Prendick flees into the jungle, but he soon realizes that the island is populated with Moreau's cerebral creations, and not all are divested of their savage habits. That captured my attention. I got it, and it was the first classic I think I've ever read, other than things that I've read in school, and I really love this one. I have not read it since 2018 or 2017. So I don't know how much I'm going to actually like it if I do reread it, but it was one of the books that actually made me realize that not all classics are bad, and that I really enjoyed it at that time. The next book I also is a classic, because now we're moving on to the classics, is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. After reading this one, I wanted to read more classics because I've had this idea that classics are really dense, are like difficult to get through, and I just didn't want to pick them up. But I've heard great things about this one. This is one of so many people's favorite book, and I picked it up. The first time I thought I read it, it was okay, nothing special. The next time I read it, and I read it the second time, it was one of my favorite books. One of my favorite classics right now is number 2 in my favorite, no, number 3 in my favorite classics. It went down, and you will see the top 2 in a bit. I highlighted so many books, I highlighted so many quotes, and it's very beautiful. I was actually debating whether I should reread this one this year, and I didn't have time because I was reading many other books and I couldn't fit it in. So I really like this one. It's still one of my favorite books. The next book I've read is, well, I think I'm going to go chronological order, is Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This was my first introduction to Russian classics, and it's still one of my favorite Russian classic, one of my favorite Dostoevsky work, because although I haven't read that many, to be honest. I've only read this one and The Idiot. I have 2 others on my TBR currently, but this one is my top favorite by him. Like I'm saying, like I've read all of them, but this one is my favorite by him. As you can see, I've highlighted so many books. I've read so many quotes. I've read this one, I think, probably twice as well. And this made me realize that I actually do like Russian classics. And although I'm still dipping my toes in Russian classics, I'm not that far into it. Like I'm still a beginner. I think I have not read that many, but I do really like the ones that I have read. The next one is one of my all-time favorite classics. This is my second best classic of all time. This is my This is my second best classic of all time. This is my third best classic of all time. And this one is my first best classic of all time. This is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And if you can notice anything, like as you can see, this was my first introduction to classics. It's kind of similar to Frankenstein. This one, he basically creates this concoction between animal and human. And this one is obviously a creation that Dr. Frankenstein created. He created the monster Frankenstein. So there's obviously a theme in here that's of like monsters or aliens criticizing humanity. I'm really into that. This one is my favorite classic. I have read this one not that long ago, I think last year, maybe the year before that, and I think this is my favorite classic. Like, the writing about this one, the nature imagery, the critique on humanity, and like everything about this book is obviously the best thing I've ever written. The prose is so beautiful. As you can see, I have so many tabs in here. I really want to reread this one. I actually missed this book. Like, I want to reread it. The thing that actually made me really love this book is that I've never actually seen any adaptation of Frankenstein. I've only just, I know that the green creature and everything, and I'm so glad that this book is not like that. This is so much better than any other like Frankenstein green creature that you know out there. This is the best book out there. I know it's difficult to find like a favorite book, but I think this one is definitely up there. So these are all the books that I think made me the reader that I am today. I don't know how many. I just didn't want to choose a number and then pick books based off a number. I just wanted to pick books that when I think of them, I think that they have made an impact in my life, and these books did make an impact in my life. Some of them more than others, but they have definitely made me the reader that I am today and the person that I am today. Let me know if you have one book that changed your reading taste or anything that may just changed you in some way or another. I'm really interested in getting to know that, and as always, I will see you in another video very soon. Bye.